Let's talk about the football. Welcome back. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're meant to be here to talk about Celtic 2, Dundee 0, and don't get me wrong, that's exactly what we're going to talk about because this is a Celtic channel. Believe it or not, we talk about the Celtic games. However, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the bigger picture tonight in Scottish football. It's well and truly Celtic and Aberdeen in the title race this season. Both Celtic and the Dons moved 9 points clear of Rangers. Let's just get that elephant out the room straight away. The super scoreboard's a cracker tonight, by the way. I had it on the way up the road. It's a good laugh. And listen, it's football. You poke fun at your rivals. And of course I'm going to poke fun at them tonight for losing to Aberdeen. I seen it coming. It was as obvious as the nose in my face that Aberdeen would beat Rangers tonight. It's been a bad couple of days for Rangers. They need to sort things out. But when you tie this into what Celtic have to deal with, listen, people keep talking about Aberdeen, they'll fall away, that they won't be able to push Celtic to the edge, that eventually we run clear of them. And as much as I believe that, because we're still going about our business and winning games, the only points that we have dropped is against Aberdeen. As much as I do believe we will end up winning this league title, we can't bypass Aberdeen at the minute, and especially ahead of Saturday. What a result for Aberdeen to get tonight against Rangers ahead of the League Cup semi-final. Huge result for them. The game at the weekend is going to be an absolute cracker. But wow, just take a moment to enjoy the league table, ladies and gentlemen. Just enjoy it. Drink it in. Celtic 2, Dundee 0. Let's cover that. Well, it is another win for Celtic in their quest to become champions for the 4th year in a row. Brendan Rodgers' side just keep going, and even when they're not performing at their best, they still get the job done. Let me just get one thing clear. I think tonight's game was probably the closest thing that I've seen to last season's performances we'll get, and that's not to say that we were bad or anything. I think it was just us taking our foot off the gas a little bit, going through a lot of rotation, clearly showing maybe the wear going through the team right now with the amount of football we've been playing, reserving ourselves for a couple of big games against Aberdeen at the weekend and then Leipzig on Tuesday. I think tonight was always going to be a little step back from the ruthlessness that we can maybe usually see with Celtic at Celtic Park. I think that we had to reserve those energy levels for these two games coming up. And I mean that with all due respect to Dundee, who obviously finished in the top half last season. Have been led really, really well by Tony Docherty, and they're doing well in their own respect, their own regards. They have deserved every bit of praise that they get at the minute. But I think that it was always going to be that kind of step back and a bit more of a performance that would resemble last year's Celtic. You know, when we were in it, remember Halloween last year, and you know Celtic weren't performing well at all. The performances weren't great. There was bits of that in tonight's game. I thought at times it was a really brutal watch, especially the first half. But when you take into consideration the amount of changes we went through, I mean, we played a front three that had Yang and Luis Palma in it. Says a lot. I know. You know, it was to be expected, but they still went out there in a professional manner and won the game. They kept pushing, and they made sure they just dominated it. Dundee, at the end of the day, didn't have a look in. There was never any threat to Celtic. Well, tell a lie, in the first minute there was. Dundee could have scored a cracker in the first minute. It was a good save from Kasper Schmeichel. But aside from that chance, Celtic were in total control from the first to the last whistle. It was a professional job, and sometimes you just need those games. The games that tick by and get you through to the next big game. They're just as important as the ones that you go and win 4-5-0. They're just as important as your Champions League games. So as long as you're finding 3 points, that's the priority. And when you look at what Aberdeen done to Rangers tonight, it was paramount that we found the 3 points. Because if not, we could have been trailing the Dons going into the next match day. So it's huge for so many different reasons. I'm glad we got the job done. We'll try and dissect it a little bit. I'm just going to cut to the chase. And some people might go, oh, you're exaggerating. Man, it was a chore to watch at times, I thought. I didn't necessarily enjoy what I was watching in the first half. I think there was a couple of players who looked decent. And defensively, we didn't really have to do anything. But going forward, we were just a little, stagnant at times. We were really hesitant to do things to the the same, and I used the word ruthlessness a moment or so ago. I thought we didn't have that ruthlessness in what we were trying to do in the first half. And a lot of it maybe came down to the fact it was a very different front three. Because I thought the midfield three played well. I thought that Engels had a decent first half by all accounts. I thought that McCowan played well again in the first half. Bernardo, I don't remember him doing much, but I didn't moan about him, so that's a positive. It was more when we got into the final third where things started to go wrong. Luis Palma will come out of the game tonight, I think, with the most criticism. And probably rightly so, to be quite honest. He was poor tonight. He didn't take his chance. And that's what's most frustrating about Luis Palma, because he came on the park in Bergamo last week, and when the game finished, everybody was saying the same thing about him. He actually looked decent. He actually came on and made an impact. He took his chance well, and maybe he should be rewarded for that. And he was rewarded for it. He was given a start tonight in a game which was very obvious would probably be the best game to start him. And I feel like he's just wasted an opportunity again. And don't get it twisted in what I'm saying here. I don't think he was dreadful by any stretch. I don't think he was terrible like he was, but he wasn't good, and he didn't do enough to wow me to say he's took the most of his opportunity tonight. I thought Yang done a lot more on the other side, and listen, Yang wasn't even great either, so that says a lot. Palma there's something about him that's just not clicking in a Celtic shirt, and I really want him to succeed because I want every Celtic player to succeed. But as the weeks go on and the chances get thinner and thinner for him, you do wonder, where does this career go for him at Celtic? And how long should we prolong it? Because he's not really adding anything to the team. Once again, with all due respect to Dundee, a player who we've spent £3.5 million on, Luis Palma, and a guy who believes in himself so much and showed us so much when he first came in the door at Celtic, should be having a bigger impact against Dundee, should be taking the right back for a walk. That wasn't necessarily happening for him. And that saddens me. It does, because I just feel like he's had a huge chance. He was rewarded for his contribution against Atalanta, and it's just led to nothing. And he's not been able to build on from it. He's not been able to... I think what's more frustrating is he's not been able to give faith to the Celtic fans that he's got it in him. And I don't want to be too harsh on him, but he was just poor for me tonight. It wasn't the only one. I thought Kyogo was really poor in the first half as well. Two big chances that he messed up. And especially the first one, fair enough, it's saved by the keeper. But the second one, that's a really bad finish. Like, really bad. He's yards out from the goal, and I don't know if he's used his weaker foot. I need to go back and watch it. But from my seat, anybody, any striker, Cyril Dessers should be scoring that, and he was poor as well. And I don't think, as I said, Yang was necessarily great. So for me in the first half, we didn't need to deal with much, which meant the defence were fine. I think the midfield done their job well enough as well. It was in the final third where we just didn't look right, and maybe that was down to the heavy rotation. But as I said, it was a brutal first half at times. I just didn't think we could get into a rhythm. But it wasn't anything, it's not as if... I know I sound really negative here, and I don't mean to sound like a pure moaning bastard. I'm not at all. When the half-time whistle went, I applauded the team off the park. I said, we'll pick it up in the second half. And that's exactly what we did. Second half, we just looked a lot more like ourselves, didn't we? And I think that came through the changes that we made. And I know that sounds very easy to say, but... better players in the park, you become a better team, and I think nothing was more evident of that than the change of Alistair Johnson coming on for Tony Ralston. Johnson scores minutes after coming on. Brendan Rodgers, after the game, came out and said he's liking the feeling of scoring goals, he's hungry, and he's being a real leader for Celtic in a minute. And I think you're seeing a lot of that week in, week out, and I think you can see it growing week in, week out at Celtic. And he's doing really, really well at the minute, Alistair Johnson. He's by far and miles the best fullback in the country. He is a future Celtic captain in most people's eyes. He is just really enjoying himself at the minute, and he's finding his best form. The difference was night and day once he came on the park for Celtic for me, and he brings that intensity, which I think that was really what was missing in the first half, the intensity of what we usually see. And as I said, maybe it was the right game to step back a little bit, not be as intense, to reserve the energy for the two games coming up. But I feel like a bit of it returned when guys like him were on the park, guys like Rio Hatate, Dyson Maeda were on the park. And yeah, he got the goal, put Celtic in the lead. It kind of calmed some of the nerves that were. And listen, I say calmed some of the nerves. There was never really any tension in the stadium, I would say. Maybe people were a bit frustrated that the first half wasn't. You know, I remember times where Palmer would hold the ball up rather than taking it forward, or somebody would hold the ball up and people were getting a little bit annoyed. But there was no real tension in the ground. But I think it lifted a lot of relief for some folk that Celtic weren't going to kind of hobble over the line. And once again, once we got that goal, it was still just the same. Celtic in total control of the game. We found a penalty. Arne Engels scores the penalty. Game's done. Like, I know that is such a brief and short summary of the second half, but that's essentially what happened. We had more chances, we looked a lot more like ourselves, we probably could have scored another one, but I mean we done what we had to do, and I think that the changes really brought that intensity back to the team that we needed. We were playing some of the football that we're more familiar with, finding passes in the key areas and seeing the overlaps a bit more. Yeah, it was just a much better, much hungrier second half performance from Celtic, and you really can't be too upset at that. I think one thing that I need to talk about from the game in general, but it obviously extends into the positives of the second half, was how nice it was to see Greg Taylor back in the team, how nice it was to see Cameron Carter-Vickers back in the team, starting the games, I should say, for the club. You know, you missed them big time, and I think that the guys who've stood in for them have done a really good job in standing in for them, especially as times went on. And I'm not necessarily dissing them by any stretch, because I'll come on to Austin Trusty in a moment. But Vickers looked good. Taylor looked really good, in my opinion. I think that you could see some of what we were missing in times where we struggled. When you think back to those couple of games where people were talking about maybe Valley not being so good enough, and we were talking about what we missed with Greg Taylor on that left-hand side, I think you could see a lot of that back. It was just really nice to have him back in the team. And now when Adam Ida hopefully returns soon enough, will hopefully stay fit for a long time, especially big Cameron Carter-Vickers. I'm hoping that he can stay fit, but it was so nice to have him back in. And it's nuts to think, you know, is that the first time we've had Vickers and Trusty start a game together, when essentially that was planned to be maybe the starting back, the back four, or sorry, the centre back partnership going forward. You know, we spent the money on Trusty, a lot of money. The idea was maybe he was going to come in and replace Liam Scales, and that's the first time we've actually seen them start together, I think. And I thought they'd done really well. I thought Trusty was once again great today, and what I was really interested to see is how Trusty would cope on that left-hand side, his natural position. And he looked good. I mean, we weren't tested enough to sit and say, like, oh, Trusty had a remarkable game, Vickers had a remarkable game. They were solid in what they had to do, but they didn't have an awful lot to do. But I thought Trusty looked like, once again, he's just growing more in confidence. And sometimes that's what you need as a player, just to unlock your best. You just need that confidence. And maybe that was something that he struggled with when he was first there. It's a huge step up coming from a Sheffield United to Celtic. And I think he's handled it really, really well. I think the last few games he's went from strength to strength. And I liked what I've seen of him again tonight. So, yeah, second half, we were just much, much better. I think that Brendan Rodgers will be far more pleased with what we got in the second half as well. Love it. So, as we know, as I mentioned at the start of the video, Celtic and Aberdeen move 9 points clear of Rangers as we head into our Scottish Cup League Cup semi-final at the weekend against them. Aberdeen's it's going to be tough at the weekend, and we're going to talk about it more over, of course, the next couple of days. But it'll be tough, and I guess we can all have a good old laugh at Rangers. Wonder what will happen next. We've come on. Huge. Motherwell will be fancying their chances. It's a very interesting few months. It's coming up here in Scotland. Can Aberdeen keep it up? Can Rangers improve? Can Celtic just keep going? It's mad at the minute, the landscape of the country. So aye, but a win tonight. Big smiles. Huge. Anyway, if you've enjoyed, like and subscribe. We'll be back on the channel tomorrow. And until the next time, take care. God bless. And aye. Cheerio. 9 clear. Haha.